My name's Josh Allison. I build custom motorcycles, cars, hot rods. From Connecticut. The shop is American Metal Customs, where we do everything from high-end restorations, high-end metal shaping, paint, interiors. It's a full custom shop. A little bit about me, my background. Originally, I was born in Wyoming. I never wanted to do this for a living. I was wanting to be an artist, so I tried to do the college thing, and that tanked pretty fast for me. And through that, I ended up in Fort Collins. I started becoming more of, trying to push into my art a little bit more, so I started doing airbrushing. And on the side, I was always building and riding bikes. That kind of opened up the door to trying to fabricate and stuff, which I couldn't do. So that took me to Wyotech. So I went back and forth for a year to Laramie, Wyoming. And through my Wyotech experience, it was pretty awesome. Got into street rod, advanced street rod, and started to learn how to, a little bit of metal shaping and TIG welding, and really fell in love with it. Through that, I got hired by Neil, a gentleman that owns 10 Element, and I was just really fortunate. He's one of the best metal shapers I've ever met in my life, and so I worked under him for a while and really turned me on to this and how cool it was. And I realized for the first time, man, if I can dream something up, I can freaking create it. And I really fell in love with it. So I ended up going on to Pinky's Rod Shop, and then I ended up at Custom Auto, which became The Forge, working with Rex Rogers and a bunch of really special people. And so I did that for a really long time.
And then who did you call?
Well, then I met a gentleman named Shane, and he started supporting, doing some posts and stuff. And so the relationship with Baileigh ended up happening, and then it was time for me to start my own shop, which I did. Me and my awesome wife over there. We did Crybaby Cycles, which was great, doing cars and bikes once again. That led into a crazy thing that went into Orange County Choppers, which eventually we met Chris Bishop, and then we started American Metal Customs in Connecticut. So that's a little fast track of my background and how I ended up here. So today what we're going to do is we're going to do some fundamentals of the mallet and bag. We're going to do some English wheel stuff. We're going to do some shrinker stretchers, some planishing hammer. I know for a lot of you guys that are already, past this fundamentals is what everybody always calls them, but this is super, super important. If you can't understand shrinking and stretching and these principles, then you're kind of at a loss, All these power hammers are absolutely amazing. It gets it done faster, but you can do the same thing with some of this simple tooling. So this grows you into that. It's all a part of it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a tank side. Now, there's only an hour here today, so I just do the best I can. We'll see how far we get. If you guys have any more questions or want to try to do this, come get me later tomorrow, and we'll get you all the way maybe through a tank side. There's a lot of different things when it comes to this that I really enjoy on the more artistic side is don't limit yourself to anything. You start getting into a shape, that shape can change a little bit. I do a lot of cut-ins. I love bead rolling. There's a lot of things you can do to make something that can start off kind of simple, look absolutely incredible, and really separate it from, the norm. So we can get into that once again later on today and tomorrow as well of kind of, a deeper process of this. So if you look at this is the shape we have. We're all cut out. What I've done here is I have about 5/8, 3/4 of a lip. Always go longer on your panel because you're going to always have to cut back and you're stretching and shrinking, so we're going to always trim back because when you go to weld all this together, you don't want the metal to be too thinned out. So anytime you do a part, make sure you have an overflow of that. On this side, this is the in, this is the out. Obviously we're going to be hammering, we're going to be wheeling this. So what I've done is I've made some layout, and right here what this does is it just helps me track where I'm hitting it, so that it's just not super sporadic as we're starting to get into the deeper shape. Just pretend we're building this on a buck. Once again, if you want it to fit, you got to fine tune it. But here what we're going to do is just find a fun, cool shape and see where we end up. So there's all kinds of different mallets in the industry. I really enjoy these. I like the wood ones. This is a really nice bag. The bag is cool to me because it allows it to go a little bit deeper so you can get into it a little bit faster. The stumps are awesome too. Stumps are, it's not going to allow you to get those original deep hits, especially in the beginning. As you guys get better, you want to go fast. So we can get into this, pretty hard blows. You can see there's different radiuses on these mallets, different mallets, and that'll come into the different areas of this. All right, here we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to start in this bigger radius, work our way back here. And on a tank, usually there's a bigger radius up front, and it's going to narrow back. So we're not going to work this back here as hard as we're going to work this until we really start fine-tuning our shape. Now, when you start off, you can see right away it wants to spring back. When I push it down, you can see that's what we want, and we want that radius to start coming out. So you don't want to get it too loose. You don't want it to completely roll on you. So what we want to do is we want to start shrinking this in a little bit, and then we're going to go to the wheel and the planishing hammer and back and forth until we really start getting that radius, and it'll hold the shape better. So at first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some light shrinks on this, and I'm kind of rolling it over as well. I'm using the shrinker also, a little bit of a shrink, but you see I'm also bending it. It's going to help in the initial stages to kind of get it to do what I want it to do. Always coming back, kind of pushing it out. Now what we'll do is we'll come over here. Now on the wheel, when I first start, you can see it's really bumpy and rough, right? We're not going too hard, but as we finish it out, we're going to go lighter and lighter on the wheel. Right now, what we want to do is we want to work this out. What's that? This one is kind of, I don't know, it's a lower crown. That one's a high radius crown for when we really start to bring it around. But that depends on your part and what you want to do.
In this rough state, are you worried too much about traction pattern?
Not right now. And that's where we're going to lighten up the wheel when you want to start really finishing it out. Because we're going to be planishing, and it's going to get there's a lot going on in it right now. Yeah. So right now, as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm just trying to achieve and get some shape in there. So we're coming back, pushing it down. You can see what we need to do. It's already starting to kind of take some form. So now we're going to start repeating that process in the beginning to really get some shape in there and start getting it to hold what we want. So we're going to go back to the mallet. You can see right there, what I'm doing is I'm kind of forming it with my hand. I'm getting it to kind of go where I want it to go. And now we're starting to get some shape and to get some of the strength in the panel so that it has that radius that we're going to start really getting into. Now you can see as I'm getting into it, you got all these waves right here. Those waves are what we need to shrink, right? Because as we're stretching here, we got to shrink this over because what we wanted to do is achieve this. So as we stretch, we shrink. All right, so now let's go back to the shrinker. Now this is where you can get a little bit more aggressive on it, and you can start trying to pull this around. You can see right there too how it folds. Then what I'm going to do right here is now I'm going to use my shrinker, and I'm really going to bend that over to try to kind of set that bottom line of the tank. Go back to the wheel. Now what you'll notice too is on these radiuses, it's going to go fast. Up here you can see with that point, this is where you need a lot of shape up here and a lot of shrink here to start really bringing that around. And once again, I'm not going too hard back here right now because we don't want to overshape that. Once again, this is the rough-in process, so I'm not super concerned on some highs and lows, and I'm not super concerned about tracking. Now, this is when you start, as you do this more, you'll learn to kind of read the metal and what it's doing. And once again, it's telling me right here that we got to really get into it. Now, this is where you can get into really hard hammer blows. We're going to really start putting some shape right here to get that nice look of, a nice round tank side. Some people like a lot of shape. Some people like a little. Once again, that just depends on, what style and look you're going for. So I started with this English wheel, that planishing hammer, those shrinking and stretchers, and the mallet and bag. That was it. Well, oh yeah, the bead roller. I love bead rolling. Like almost everything I do, I touch it with the bead roller. All right. So as you can see, as I'm hitting it, I'm also pushing it out. When I push it out, you see how it's pulling that back? And that's the radius we want to start to achieve to really pull this thing around. And with aluminum, it goes pretty fast. But once again, it's pretty cool how the metal shows you. Once again, as I'm pushing that out, it's going to get the wave effect, which shows you where you need to shrink and where you need to bring all that metal together. As I'm hitting here on these upper radiuses, it really starts to bring that in. I don't want to go too hard right here because I don't want it to get too weird and too tight. So I'll work this top edge. Always kind of hammering those out a little bit, pushing it back in. Now we can go back to the shrinker. Back to the mallet for a minute. And once again, we're going to start putting a lot more radius into this with the wheel. What's cool with the wheel too is you can really feel as, you're taking out the damage. You can feel it smooth out. You can feel it where it needs to get hit and where it doesn't need. Now we could do all this on the wheel, or you could use the planishing hammer as well. And so I'll show you guys some techniques on that here. Usually if you have some Coronas, this goes way faster. But I can feel it. Can you guys see that? There's a lot of lump, there's a lot of bumps going on in there, and it's going to naturally, in your hands, you'll start feeling it planish out real nice. And as you get better and better too, you'll be able to look at using your light, seeing the ups and downs, the highs and lows. These wheels are nice too, because as you can see, I'm always adjusting with my feet. So as you're reading the panel, you can kick it, you can get it tighter, you can get it looser, depending on what you need to do. All right, so you can see in a fairly short amount of time, we're starting to achieve a shape finally. It's starting to hold it, it's getting more rigid. I'm getting less of the oil can effect, we're getting some shape. And so let's get into a little planishing hammer. This machine's really nice, it's simple. Also too, as you can see, there's a lot of room. This is awesome because you can get a panel in here, you can really work it, you can get a really deep crown. This is a high crown radius die. They come with everything from a flat to this. This is great for in those hard to get spots. You can really planish, you can really move some metal with it. This is another great machine, once again, but just because the flow is awesome, you can get big pieces. And if you notice here, this is a little bit of a lesser crown, right? So we're going to use these two machines back and forth. That high crown, we're going to start getting into here, and then we're going to use this to start achieving our outside radius. So as you can see, what I'm doing here is I'm starting to take this and I'm starting to make it a nice flow and a nice round. And it's also doing two things for me. It's right here, it's stretching all this out, and it's allowing this to roll over, and I can really start achieving a nicer look. This is where light is really important in the shop too. Can you guys see that reflection? You can get really far just off a reflection. We always go into the pick and file process, bumping and denting at the end. I usually finish with a 80, 180, all that happy horse shit for, metal finished cars and bikes. But like I said, before you get there, you'll get to the point where that light's going to show you a lot. And already you can feel it with all that work we've been doing. Not too bad. No, rub it like you mean it. Like your girlfriend did. And then once again, the panel is going to start showing me. Like over here, it's starting to get wavy. So once again, what do we need to do? Shrink it. Yes. All right, let's get into a little of this guy. So what this is going to do is it's going to move it pretty fast. You can hear it's variable, which is nice because you don't want to just full throttle this all the time. But right there, I needed to raise that up. So a little getting into it, raises that spot up. I can start really working that panel. All right, back to the bag. We're pretty in control of what's going on. We're starting to get a nice look. But what I want now is I really want this to get bulbous. So there's a lot of shape that has to go into this to really get this to move. What you don't want to do, and I've seen a lot of guys do this, they get a little bit happy and they go like super hard in the beginning. And until you really get comfortable with it, you can lose it. And it's always easier to add than try to take away. It's very hard to take away. You don't, usually that's where parts end up in the trash and you're cussing and freaking out and making more shit. So ease into it until you get comfortable. Another thing I'm trying to do with the mallet, when you come into it, and always make sure you got nice soft radiuses. A lot of times I'll sand these. What you don't want to do on your hits is get off kilter, and what it'll do is it'll put hard grooves into it and marks. Try never to use metal hammers until we get to the finishing. Once again, you don't want to scar the metal, especially on aluminum. It's soft. So really nice, direct, precise hits. Gonna chase this down a little bit. You can see it's really starting to come around now. Now right here, this is where it kind of gets into a different thing. So you can start shrinking harder here. That's going to help pull this around and down here, but it's also going to pull this, and you don't want to pull that too far. So this is where you got to start kind of reading the metal. A little bit. That's a hard thing to explain. Once you get the feel of the metal, you can feel what it's doing and what it needs to do. But right here, do you see how it's kind of wanting to wallow out? That's where I'm going to try to pull this back a little bit. So when I come up here and I'm hitting it, do you see how it pulls that in? And it happens pretty fast, especially with aluminum. So I can see it. And you can feel it in your hand right there, roll over. And then I'm going to go light here and give it a little bit, but not too much. And yeah, sometimes I'll do a little correction. And then right here, you can see we're kind of getting out there. So I'm going to pull this in a little bit. And even right there, you see how fast that went? It goes really quick. And we're going to start working this tail end harder because we got to pull all that around, and that's going to be a tight radius right there. Right here, once again, using the tool, not properly, but I'm using it just to kind of bend it over. Not really shrinking. I'm just setting that tone because on the bottom of this tank, in my mind, we'd want that nice and flat, not so rounded. Taking a little bit of that out, and you can get deeper with your shrinks too. And now it gets a little bit harder. You can start filling the panel. Now what we've done is we're starting to get a radius there, but we need way more there. Can you guys see that? So let's go back to our hammer. Notice, once again, I'm not working this super hard right now. Because if you work that too hard, that tank, it'll come around fast, and we'll get to that spot. But not quite yet. So I just work this a little bit in here, and then I work this way harder. Now what we'll do, we'll take it on to this die. This is a higher crown die. We're going to really try to start moving this. So what I'm doing right now, right here, is I'm chasing this down. Right? Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to cross roll it. I'm going to chase it back up. And that's going to really kind of help me start setting my shape right there. As it smooths out, I'm going to start doing a little bit longer rolls here throughout the whole panel. Once again, just by feel, what I want it to look like. I'm just going with it. Once again, if you're trying to set this on a buck, we'd be going back and forth to that, making sure it's going to fit your, the radius you want. You can see, once again, need to do a little shrinking over there. Start thinking about that's got to start coming around. We're looking good. My shape, we got strength in it. It's not wobbly. So now it's going to really let us to start really getting into the panel a little bit more aggressively. So now what I'm starting to do is I'm starting to chase that out, right? And I can see that with the light too, that I want to make a nice roll. So that's where I'm using the light as a reflection to start making a nice radius right there. What I'm doing right there is that was a little bumped out. So I'm taking that and I'm forcing that die to chase that out so I can start achieving that nice round. And you can see that metal, it'll push out. Now it's cool too when you start getting into this on the shrinking and stuff too, because say that your radius is getting a little wonky, you don't really like it, you can shrink it harder in spots and it'll help pull that in and it'll start changing your radius too if you start getting off the buck or whatever shape you're trying to achieve. So now what I'm starting to do on my hits is this is starting to pull over pretty hard, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start working it less here, and I'm going to start working it more in to get a bigger radius in it. That's starting to roll over nice. We'll start working that rear end here pretty soon. What's that? I'm kind of all over. I've done bucks before. A lot of times I free shape just because I'm a very organic builder. So a lot of times there'll be things that I'm like, oh man, this would be cool if this kicked back in a little bit. A lot of times I'll make one side, I'll get it where I want. I match the other side with radiuses. And then what I do, like radius dies, then I do a center section and a tunnel. Usually they're always a 4-piece tank. So I can see as we're starting to get a lot of shape into it. So right now we're just going to work this to get a nice contour right there. So as you can see, now we're really starting to come into it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to keep moving this. We're going to put some more shape into that area right here. It's really tough on a lot of this stuff. Guys will get into shrinking. Say you get like a spot here that, you've overstretched. You can come into it and you can shrink it back. Sometimes in my experiences, trying to fight it is almost easier than just starting over. But yeah, usually it's just, you can heat shrink, you have the disc shrinker, stuff like that, but it can be tough depending on what you're making, So what we're going to start doing is kind of fine-tuning this in. Normally from this point, I just keep going on whatever radius I want to achieve, the look of it. And then what we do is we start taking it on the table, and you got to start looking where you need things to set so it's flat. And then you start cutting it back so you can get that nice flat surface all the way around it. Probably won't have time to get into all that today of trying to get it to lay flat, doing the cut back so that you can put two sides together. So we got a nice radius up here, starting to get some nice shape here. And this is where now you just want to work the wheel. You want to work the planishing hammer and really starting to smooth it out. So what I'm starting to do here is this is just where I'm really starting to smooth everything out. I can start filling it, but you can see there's still hammer marks. So what you would want to do is you'd want to just keep wheeling it. You want to not, put too much shape in the wrong areas. Watch where your wheels are tracking. And then as you get farther along, I lighten up on that wheel. And then so what happens eventually is as you keep going, you got to be careful because you are stretching, but you can really start getting a nice look. You can start seeing where you really need to hit it. You can fill it with your hands. And then this is where I'd be coming to the table and doing some trim back to get all that area. We put a lot of shrink into it, cutting that back a little bit. And up here is a little wonky, but like I said, we just don't have time to make it perfect today.
Like this, can you come back in with the shape and put a dimple in there?
Yeah, and that's what I love to do. So I'm a mixed metal guy. So this is me, and we can get into some of that stuff with you guys. Yeah. So what he's asking is once you start getting your shape, right? It's like, say that's your tank side. Got some good radius in there, it's looking pretty dope. You're happy with it. He's like, hey, can you come back in there and put a shape, put something in there? Absolutely. A lot of times I'll put it on the planishing hammer. You can create a buck. You can push it in with the buck, or you can free shape it in. What I like to do a lot of times is I would run maybe a cool stepped in bead, maybe a multiple stepped bead on the outside. Then what I would do is I'll come in here and I'll do a cut in. I cut the metal, I press it in, I weld in that piece, and then I'd fill it in with maybe a piece of bronze or brass, really to get that mixed metal look. Yeah, so that's where the artistic, creative side of don't limit yourself. Anything you want to do it, man. I mean, it's a piece of metal. You f it up, you just start again, right? So don't be scared of that. Start over, do it until you get it right. And that's what I was saying. Say that you're making this shape and you don't like that, just change that shape, guys. Shrink it more, stretch it more, beat it in. Make the metal do what you want it to do. And all these tools and all this I'm showing you, it's highly controlled. I mean, every little shrink, every little stretch, you guys can choose what you want to do on it. So that's where, a lot of guys, whether you're making a big fender, you're making a grill shell for a 32, a gas tank, all this fundamentals can go into any single part that you guys want to make. Does that make sense? Get creative, have fun. My name's Josh. Out.